2025 Bard College Awards. Thank you all for coming. Yay! My name is Jane Bryan. I am the Director of Alumni Affairs, and I have worked here for a long time, and I work with a lot of amazing people, and this is one of my favorite events of the year, so I'm so glad you're here, because we honor amazing alumni, and we honor our faculty who are retiring. And I just want to say that none of this would be possible without a lot of volunteers, and which are volunteer board members, the Board of Governors who is running this event, and you will meet all of them before, but I do want to thank our trustees and the chair of the board and Mollie Meikle for all the work they do. Volunteer work is what we do. And for everybody who's volunteered for their reunion, we have a wonderful group coming back, and the weather will not stop us. There's fun all weekend. Just go on all the rides. And so thank you very much. And without further ado, I turn it over to Mollie Meikle.
Jane. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Bard College Awards. I'm thrilled to see so many of you here in Annandale at the Richard B. Fisher Center for the Performing Arts. And hello to those of you tuning in online, especially my parents. I'm your host, Mollie Meikle, class of 2003, and president of the Bard College Alumni Association Board of Governors. Tonight, we take time in this busy and glorious weekend to celebrate alumni, faculty, and staff members of the Bard community. But first, I want to thank and acknowledge members of the Board of Governors who are here. Please stand. I'd like to especially give a shout out to my co-chairs of the nominations committee, Ryan Messina, class of 2006, and Sonia Hood, class of 1990, who is furiously on her way down here from Toronto, who will be celebrating her 35th reunion. And speaking of reunions, those of you who are in a reunion class celebrating this year, please stand. You zeros and fives. Welcome back. We missed you. Where have you been? I hope that while you're here on campus this weekend, you'll find time to walk down Annandale Road, explore the far reaches of the lawn at Blythewood, go down the back steps of the library and find your senior project, or maybe search out your sophomore year dorm room. I hope you'll take a moment to remember your years here at Bard and those friends, colleagues, staff, professors that you shared your time with. Sit with those memories. Last year at this event, Leon followed my remarks with his own, as he'll do tonight, and he recommended nostalgia, as it beats reality, especially now. He added, don't resist it. I'm gonna double down. Don't resist it. But don't forget to realize the here and the now. Bard operates 10 public high schools in 6 cities across the country. Our students graduate with a Bard College Associate's degree for free. Bard enrolls over 420 men and women in AA and BA programs in 7 prisons across New York State. And this year, marks the inaugural cohort enrolled in the Bard Prison Initiative's first ever master's degree program, offering an MA in public humanities. Bard has more refugee and displaced students per capita than any other institution in the United States. We have about 85 students enrolled here in Annandale from Afghanistan, the Ukraine, and Russia and Eurasia. If you count our programs of displaced students in Myanmar, Kenya, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, we are educating more than 3,000 displaced students at this moment. This is the here and now. Tonight, we honor alumni who are at the top of their fields. Tomorrow, Leon will confer undergraduate degrees on 477 students. They will join our ranks as proud alumni, those that understand what it means to be part of an institution that, to paraphrase former President Remer Klein, understands the assignment to make a better world. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce the president of Bard College and my friend, Leon Botstein.
So I want to thank all of you for coming. This is a very nice and very family event, and it's sort of odd to have all these very distinguished people in back, it's bittersweet because some of them are retirees, people who are stepping out of active service at the college. But most of all, I want to thank you for attending this event. And believe it or not, on this podium, it says, "Speak into the mic and look forward." I don't know for whom this is intended, but Mollie, when I asked her what I should say to start the evening off, she said, "Be lighthearted." Now, she knew very well, given the situation American higher education is in, and with the president we have, to be lighthearted would be to, in a way, lose your common sense. But humor in dark times is vital. And I think we can afford to be lighthearted because I believe that what we do and what institutions of higher education do is fundamentally a form of resistance against tyranny, autocracy, the violation of fundamental constitutional and human rights, and the assault on science and the pursuit of knowledge, research, and teaching. So by doing what we do well, we can see ourselves as fighting against something, and I am optimistic that we will emerge victorious. And while we're at it, fix the things that aren't actually right. For those of you who are alumni, I want to thank you particularly for coming, and I think you should be very proud of the college. Mollie mentioned many things, and I see many of my colleagues, the work we do internationally with refugees, the 10 public high school early colleges, the prison initiative, the Meikle colleges, the Bard Back for older adults coming back. There's no shortage of terrific things. But at the core of all this is the liberal arts. And the core of that is a belief in the value of inquiry and the quality of that inquiry. You will see in a moment, in the Bardian Awards particularly, that we have a fantastic faculty. and the faculty is not rigidly academic. It takes advantage of the fact that the curriculum is based on the need to know and on large questions that don't fit into the narrow boundaries of disciplines, and is a true undergraduate education. And every student that will graduate tomorrow, as all of you know, will have to have written a senior project, will have passed moderation, which is a slightly occult affair, which most of you will remember. And the quality of teaching, and I say as a teacher both in the music side and in the general education side, it was really a thrill. Our freshman seminar requires, first year seminar requires a complete reading of the Republic with critiques as a provocation. It even requires the reading of a novel which took everybody by surprise. I used my presidential influence to influence the choice of the novel, and I suggested Nabokov's first English novel called Bend Sinister, which there were several blank faces in this faculty meeting. It's a wonderful novel. It's beautifully written. It is a kind of fantastical portrait of a bully dictator in an imaginary Central European country who has a preposterous ideology and is a kleptocrat and is consumed by cruelty and taking revenge on his elementary school rivals. It is a remarkable portrait of a kind of synthesis of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. And it's a tough novel because it's very sophisticatedly written, kind of pseudo-magic realism, and with Nabokov's own very remarkable command of the English language. And it's a tribute to our undergraduates that I think, for those of us who taught it, it was the favorite book of the year. And we try hard to, not always do we succeed, into really instilling the love of knowledge and lifelong curiosity and a willingness to stand up for what one thinks ought to be the case, to listen to others, change one's mind, but most important, to preserve the freedom of speech and of assembly, and for us, academic freedom, and resist the attempt to impose censorship. The behavior of universities in autocracies has not been distinguished, and we have to preserve democracy before we somehow collapse. I was in Germany recently, and the most frequently asked question I encountered, we went with the Orchestra Now, at the invitation of the city of Nuremberg, and we did a national broadcast on the day that commemorates the Allied victory in 1945. We did an all Mendelssohn concert, including his setting of the Dona Nobis Pacem, translated by Luther, for chorus and orchestra, and the Reformation Symphony and the violin concerto, because he was banned from the airwaves and public performance from 1933 to 45. So I thought it was a way of showing the end of censorship. The orchestra played beautifully, the broadcast was very successful. The hall was filled with dignitaries, including former president, Bundespresident, and the mayors and other dignitaries. And I was asked to give a talk, which was very brief, and which I did in German, and in it I basically said that we will prevail, that autocracy will not succeed, because the question they all asked is, why is there no resistance in the United States? Why aren't people in the streets? And the truth is that we are in danger of accepting a new standard of behavior. and therefore adapting to it. And I said, well, resistance takes different forms, and that I believe that institutions of higher education, and I'm pleased to say that Harvard has distinguished itself, that in the long run, the courts, the Constitution, and the citizenry, the very people who elected our president, that we will come around and we will succeed. But they were very pleased to hear another American voice as opposed to the one either that was official or that represented the country as being, in a way, solidly behind the current administration. But this college will do very well, is doing very well. We have a larger enrollment. If you drive around, you'll see a lot of construction, and it's paid for. And there are new dormitories. There's a new Meikle studio building. And Simon's Rock will be moving to the Bard campus. For those of you who don't know, we purchased the old St. Joseph Seminary, which was then the Unification Church Seminary. I prefer to refer to the Catholics than to the Moonies. One is really a real religion, the other was a very clever business. But nonetheless, it's a fantastical facility. It's being renovated, and Bard programs will be there, part of the library will be there, and Simon's Rock will move there. And we are thriving, and we've been able to recruit fantastic younger faculty. And I want to pay tribute to the Dean of the College, who is my partner in that effort. She's tucked away somewhere here. And I want to pay tribute to Jonathan Becker, who is also tucked away somewhere here. And to Dumaine Williams, he's not tucked away, he's too big. And both to Colleen Murphy, I don't know whether she's here, and Ton Toy, who runs our finances. That's the hardest job in the college. And interesting, Malia Dumont, my chief of staff, who's vice president for strategy, all three of them are members of anniversary classes this year. So these awards that we give away are a kind of way of saying thank you to the alumni and to friends and to faculty members. And it's important to get an award in public. There was no love lost between Hannah Arendt and Remer Klein, the former president of Bard. I know that directly from her. And she felt her husband, who was a member of the faculty here, ill-treated, and that Remer, which I think she was wrong about, didn't quite appreciate the intellectual heritage that Heinrich Blücher represented. And one of her evidences was that Heinrich Blücher got an award very close to the time of his death and was given in his living room with nobody present. Now, Arendt didn't complain about that, but I could tell there was something about the presumed secrecy of this or reluctance of it. So I want to say to our awardees, we're not giving you this in private. There's also an online audience which is of unknown size, but it's substantial, and I want to congratulate each and every one of you. The online streaming is a positive benefit of the pandemic. I also want to, I do believe we have one honorary degree recipient for tomorrow here, and that's Joseph Joffe. Longtime editor of Die Zeit, and a real student of America and a real defender of the United States, and particularly of its higher education system. He unfortunately went to Swarthmore, but there's nothing I can do about that. But he went on to do graduate work at Harvard, and he has served for a long time on the Bard Berlin Board, which was once the European College of Liberal Arts before it was given to us. And an astute commentator on American politics and on the Atlantic Alliance, and a real defender of it. And I want to thank him for making the trip across the ocean. And now it's my pleasure to get this ceremony started. It's my pleasure to introduce, usually the other way around, the chair of our board. And before I say his name, he and I have been at Bard exactly the same length of time. That's right. That's right. He's one of the first people I met on campus. He was an entering first-year student, and I was an entering president. So we've known each other for 50 years. And he is outspoken, very smart, and has a variety of interests which don't exactly overlap with mine. And he never lets me to forget it. But he's been a wonderful chair. I'm very grateful for his service. It's not an easy job. And I'm very pleased that a graduate of the college is at the head of the board. And so without further ado, Jim Chambers.
These notes were from me, Leon, to speak into the mic and look forward, because I've always been in trouble at this school. Hi, I'm Jim. I'm from the A, from Atlanta. Hi, Michelle. Hi, nice to see you. And it is the best of times and the weirdest of times. But I have one thing to just comment on what you said, Leon, about resistance. There is resistance in the streets. They just don't get media play, but they should. I took my 15-year-old to the first one in Atlanta right before he turned 15. And it was a warm Atlanta day on a Saturday, and before a basketball game. And we're there, and he goes, Papa, this looks like Disney World. There's people carrying signs, there's people with buttons, and they all look different. And I said, welcome to the show. And so here at Bard, amongst our conclave, it is the best of times. It is a celebration season, and I welcome you as the chair of the board. Not the chairman, but the chair. And I like carpentry, so being referred to as a chair is an honor. Of the Board of Trustees of Bard, where, as Leon said, we have been attached at the hip for 50 years. There's been a lot of guidance and a lot of discipline, and now a lot of dialogue. We are here in the miasma of dystopia to provide a better view for the future. And that's what Bard is about. Thank you all, students, graduates, teachers, award recipients, parents, loved ones for attending, and congratulations to everyone involved in this weekend, and most especially for tonight. Congratulations to all of you award winners, and thank you for all of you retiring members of our faculty, some of whom I might have outlasted in your term. And congratulations to all of those who are receiving recognition for your outstanding achievements in this surreal world in which we find ourselves in this moment. So, resist.
The presentations of the awards will begin now. Everyone should have received a booklet on your way in that has the full citations in your program and contains more information about this year's award recipients. I now call upon Stanley A. Reichel, class of 1965, member of the Bard College Board of Trustees, and Demaine Williams, class of 2003, and Vice President and Dean of Early Colleges and Vice President for Student Affairs, to come forward with the recipient of the Bard Medal.
I have the honor of introducing Penny Axelrod, who will receive the Bard Medal, the Bard College Alumni Association's highest award.
We honor you, Penny Axelrod, for a lifetime of dedication to teaching and learning, and for your long and distinguished service to your undergraduate alma mater. As a passionate and dedicated member of the Bard College Alumni Board of Governors for an impressive 36 years, you have represented the college's core values and helped it fulfill its vital mission.
I would like to thank my brother Jeffrey for coming to Bard Commencement Weekend, and my stepson Ken and daughter-in-law Viviana for being here tonight. Sadly, my husband Jerry, who is deep into dementia, is not here. Over the years, he and I had many enjoyable Bard experiences, overnights in campus housing, enjoyable. I came to Bard as a teenager with dreams, albeit unrealistic. I was interested in abnormal psychology, treating those with mental health issues, but Professor Frank Ojay, head and heart of the department, was a new school experimental psychologist, so much for clinical psych. Common Course with the chain-smoking Charles Tremblay took me far beyond the dull textbooks of high school into primary sources. History and literature came alive. In 1963, no one except Bardians had ever heard of an undergraduate doing an experimental psychology thesis with nearly the entire student body as subjects. I was able to expand my dance vocabulary under the guidance of Anna Idleman and the various guest teachers like the famous Donald Meikle, who took the train to Rhinebeck weekly to give classes at Bard. Bard then, as now, was, quote, bigger than a college somewhere in upstate New York. Many of us here tonight are Bard supporters because we know how important Bard was to us and is to its current students. In these uncertain, fraught times, the Bard I came to in 1959 with some 200 students, 200, has, under Leon Botstein's visionary leadership, expanded its programs to embrace the education of high school, college, graduate, prison students, as well as students abroad. I am a Bard graduate and proud to be one. In accepting this award, my deep regret is that Ann Ho, roommate and dear friend since we set foot on the Bard campus in 1959, also a Bard Medal recipient, and classmate Susan Playfair, a Bardian and dear friend, are not alive to share this evening with me. But for major, very recent health issues, Jack Blum, another stalwart Bard alum, commencement honoree, and good friend would be here tonight. We recognized just how life-changing a Bard education was and continues to be. Thank you for this honor.
I now call upon Charles S. Johnson III, class of 1970, a member of the Bard College Board of Trustees, and Valerie Barr, Margaret Hamilton Distinguished Professor of Computer Science, to bring forward the recipient of the John and Samuel Bard Award in Medicine and Science.
The John and Samuel Bard Award in Medicine and Science is given to honor a scientist whose achievements demonstrate the breadth of concern and depth of commitment that characterize the pioneer physicians for whom the award is named. I am honored to announce that the 2025 recipient is Jen Gaudioso from the class of 1995.
In your 2 decades at Sandia National Laboratories, you have worked your way from the Materials and Interfaces Department through the International Security Initiatives, Weapons of Mass Destruction, Non-Proliferation, and International Biological Threat Reduction to your current role as Director of Computing Research. Today, we honor you for your achievements and for your approaching every challenge with the intellectual acumen and flexibility you showed as an undergraduate.
Shorter. Thank you for this tremendous honor. Standing here at my 30th reunion weekend, receiving the John and Samuel Bard Award feels like a profound homecoming. A full circle moment that connects my past with my present. I first learned of Bard from a recruiting brochure and was attracted to the motto, "A place to think." Initially, those words seemed like a simple promise. 3 decades later, I understand them as the foundation upon which my career has been built. What does it truly mean to have a place to think? At Bard, I discovered it meant having both the freedom and the challenge to develop intellectual independence. This campus wasn't just where I came to accumulate knowledge, it was where I learned how to think. Professor Hilton Weiss transformed my understanding of chemistry by teaching me something far more valuable than formulas or equations. He taught me how to puzzle through problems with patience and persistence. I remember countless afternoons in the lab where he wouldn't answer questions. He would simply ask me questions that led me to rethink how to discover those solutions. With Professor Samin Sitar, I learned the profound difference between being a student and becoming a researcher. Under her guidance, I began to understand that real research isn't about finding the expected answer, but about asking the right questions, especially when they lead to unexpected places. She helped me begin to see myself as someone who can create knowledge, not merely absorb it.
The education I received at Bard wasn't compartmentalized into discrete subjects. It was holistic in the truest sense, teaching me to see connections across disciplines and to approach problems from multiple perspectives. This integrated way of thinking has been invaluable in my career, including my current role as the Director of Computing Research at Sandia National Labs. At Sandia, my work today sits at the intersection of computation, physical sciences, and national security. Each day presents new challenges that require the kind of reasoning that Bard nurtured. After Bard, my journey took me to Cornell for my PhD in physical chemistry. The transition was almost seamless, not because the subjects were identical, but because Bard had prepared me with something more fundamental than specific knowledge. It taught me how to learn, how to adapt, and how to thrive in intellectual environments where questions outpace answers. Throughout my career, I've built research teams and programs guided by values I first encountered here: the commitment to continuous learning, the pursuit of intellectually engaging work, and the determination to make meaningful contributions to societies. These aren't just professional principles, they're really the legacy of my Bard education. Thank you to Bard College for this award, for the education that made it possible, and for continuing to be a place where thinking, deep, critical, creative thinking, remains the highest calling. Thank you.
I now call upon Mustafiz Shah Mohammed, class of 1997, a member of the Bard College Board of Trustees, and Lucas Blaylock, class of 2002, and assistant professor of photography, to present tonight's recipient of the Charles Flint Kellogg Award in Arts and Letters.
I have the honor of introducing Lisa Carezzi from the class of 1995, who will receive the Charles Flint Kellogg Award in Arts and Letters, given in recognition of significant contributions to the American artistic or literary heritage.
We honor you, Lisa Carezzi, for your striking color photographs, often escapist, venues like haunted houses, strip clubs, amusement parks, and dive bars, and your ability to reveal the beauty and poetry in the seemingly grotesque. As the first in your immediate family to attend college, you escaped a difficult environment and milieu, found beauty and poetry, and gave it to the world.
Reading glasses because I'm 50. Thank you. Thank you for this honor. It's not every day, month, or even year that an artist gets recognized for their work. And it's not for lack of trying in many of our cases. Developing a thick skin is something artists need to do to preserve our core. But it's nice to get to soften those calluses a little bit and accept an award like this. I spend a lot of my time as an educator myself now, working with both undergraduates and graduate students. And when I look at the undergrads, especially the first years and the sophomores, I'll recall how young and naive I was when I was here at Bard in the 90s, which is an Instagram account, by the way, Bard in the 90s, all one word. You know who you are. My mom and I arrived in 1991 in Annandale to visit after my high school guidance counselor suggested Bard. After aiming a bit off the target, remember I said I was naive, I got into only 2 colleges, which read more like the odd couple of institutions. Johns Hopkins, and Bard. When I landed here in the woods in my Wicked Witch of the West striped tights and bleached bob, versus down in Maryland where I was melting into a sea of chinos and pink Oxfords, I knew that here I was home. I came here that fall a scholarship kid, attending on the EEC program, Excellence and Equal Cost, which was literally, not exaggerating, a life-changing opportunity to get to go to Bard, which at the time was hovering around the second most expensive college, liberal arts college in the country. And I could go here for the cost of my state school. For a kid from a junkyard family outside of Philly, it didn't just change the game, it reinvented the chutes and ladders of my life. At Bard, though, I lost my class innocence and ended up rooming with a born and raised Manhattanite who had loaned me her Beamer 525i, complete with a satellite phone, to drive to my waitressing gig at the 9G Diner when it was raining, so I wouldn't arrive soaked on my bike. There, the Bard MFA students would quiz me, guessing based on my hair and demeanor somehow that I was from, of all places, Connecticut. Of course, now I am from Connecticut, and so is my kid, but at the time, I don't think I had ever even set foot there. One day at work, slinging corned beef hash, her car alarm was going off out back, and I remember the cook finally coming over to me after having asked every other person in the diner if it was theirs. "Is that your car?" I was quickly poached from the diner to work at Santa Fe in Tivoli, where I waited on art world royalty my very first night on the job and made bank over the next couple of years. Back on campus, I was balancing a major in creative writing with one in photography, but at my moderation, my literature teacher, not naming names, told me I did not have the love of language necessary to be a poet. Rather than take it as the challenge it very well might have been intended to be, I was devastated, and I ended up in tears in the bathroom of Aspinwall, a female professor coming in to console me. And I will name names there, Deirdre Dalbert. If I run into him this weekend, though, in some ways, I think I might have to thank him, as well as her, for sending me squarely down the dirt road to the photography department, where I found an even more profound home within a home in Wood Studio. The photography department, run even then by Stephen Shore, who has seemed the same age to me for the 30-some years now that I have known him, but who apparently was younger than I am now when I was his student. A mind-boggling fact for me as I get older, but my students stay the same age. As a parent now, I can imagine saying to these 18 and 19-year-old Gen Zers a similar sentiment in such a non-constructive way, though it turned out to be utterly transformative, which was maybe the point. And I'm grateful to those in the photo department for welcoming me and allowing me to find my way while being challenged and pushed in a way that didn't push me away. The value of what we do, of the liberal arts, the visual arts, and photography especially, and specifically, is massive, even if sometimes not wholly visible. The work we do as artists and photographers is a reflection of the world we live in, while at the same time we are continually remaking that image and altering perceptions as we work. An education in photography is quite literally an education in the world as we go make pictures out in the world. And with that action comes the understanding, empathy, and compassion that is sorely lacking in many open corners in our society these days. When I send my students out into the streets and parks of New Haven, and then back to their dorms and to places they come from, they are changed, and I know that the work I am doing matters, even if few of my undergraduates end up as practicing artists themselves. I don't think that's really the point for all of them. At Bard, the world opened up to this scholarship kid from a working class background whose family ran an automotive graveyard which sat in the shadow of off-gassing, flaming spires of oil refineries, where ashes from the town incinerator would rain down from time to time. It sounds like a Bruce Springsteen song, doesn't it? People always say that getting the Yale MFA is life-changing, but for me, that path did not begin there in grad school, but right here in Annandale. Here is where I realized the value of visual intelligence and figured out that I needed to and could make a difference in the world, all alongside my peers, some of whom are here tonight. I tell my students that to find their future colleagues, collaborators, and champions, they should look to their left and to their right. These friends from Bard have become that to me over these past 30 years. And together, I feel like we formed something like a tidal river, like the Hudson, flowing both ways and lifting one another up to float. Thank you.
I now call upon Joe Francis Mayer, a member of the Bard College Board of Trustees, and Thomas Keenan, Professor of Comparative Literature and Director, Human Rights Program, to bring forward the John Dewey Award for Distinguished Public Service.
I have the honor of introducing Angela Edmond, class of 2003, who will receive the John Dewey Award for Distinguished Public Service, which was established in 1990 to recognize extraordinary contributions by Bard alumni, and others to the public sector or in the public interest.
You have worked for decades on the front lines of human rights and immigration law. You were among the first students to take classes in the college's human rights program, and you have remained immersed in human rights law ever since. Your determination, intelligence, grit, and selfless commitment to those who lack access to even the most basic rights inspires us every day.
I'm so deeply honored and grateful to receive this award from Bard, a place that means so much to me. I came to Bard because I needed to be around people who were intellectually hungry, curious, and saw problems in the world around them and strove to engage actively. When I found Bard, I knew that I had found my people and my intellectual home. Bell Hooks writes, "To live consciously, we have to engage in critical reflection about the world we live in and know most intimately. I wanted to learn how to do this well, and Bard helped me. I'd like to thank my parents, my brother, and my whole family for always supporting me in all my endeavors, even those that seemed impossible. My grandfather used to tell me stories about World War II and impressed upon me that we must never let people be targeted because of their race, religion, or some characteristic about them, and must always stand up when people are suffering because of who they are. This clearly made an indelible impression and planted the seeds of my career." Thank you, Jack. Bard gave me so many unique, life-changing experiences that not only shaped the trajectory of my career, but empowered me to learn how to become myself. I knew I wanted to use writing to shed light on and bring an end to suffering, but I didn't know how. It was on the inaugural Bard South African Human Rights Study Abroad program that I fell in love with human rights law and decided to go to law school. It's also where I met one of my best friends, Renata, with whom I'm grateful to still be so close. At the Bard Globalization and International Affairs program, I had the unique opportunity to intern at Human Rights Watch, where I reported on the trial of Slobodan Milosevic for international crimes committed in the former Yugoslavia. Bard professors helped me develop a senior project on the Milosevic trial as a critique of the international justice system. At no other college would professors help me continue my internship after the BGIA program was up for me, traveling back and forth from New York City to Bard, or design an entire independent study course on Bosnian literature to deeply inform my work in a cultural context, or provide a scholarship for me to travel to The Hague to attend the trial in person. I have many professors to thank: Jamie Miller, who at the time was the director of the BGIA program, Jonathan Becker, who I'm grateful to still be in touch with, and especially Tom Keenan, my advisor. In law school, I studied international criminal law in The Hague and lived for a summer in Sarajevo, analyzing domestic war crimes trials there. Critiquing these tribunals and their actual impact on the survivors and the communities through the critical lens I developed here at Bard, and also falling in love with asylum work as a student attorney in my law school's human rights program, I began to understand that what I wanted was to work directly with the survivors of human rights violations as they sought safety, and thus started my career representing asylum seekers and torture survivors in immigration proceedings, with a focus on survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. I've had incredible opportunities to work with and learn from individuals from all over the world who have stood up for their beliefs or simply wanted to exercise their right to exist in their own skin. The part of my work that I value the most is restoring agency to my clients, who've often had their agency stripped from them by oppressors, and helping them find their voices. Although most, not all, Bard students have not experienced the trauma that my clients have, in many ways, this is the critical service that Bard provided to all of us students. Bard helped us develop our agency and our strong individual voices, and for that, I will be eternally grateful. While I love my work, it does come with vicarious trauma and often unpredictable schedules. Here, I must thank my husband, Jason Bailey, who's given me unwavering support and also challenges me to learn to prioritize myself, my personal life, and my identity outside of work. It goes without saying that my work is currently harder right now than it ever has been, as is the work of many others in other important fields in the United States. It only feels appropriate to close with a quote from Hannah Arendt about Adolf Eichmann, a Nazi official who implemented the mass deportations of millions of Jews to camps. She wrote, "The trouble with Eichmann was precisely that so many were like him, and that the many were neither perverted nor sadistic, that they were, and still are, terribly and terrifyingly normal." While the US is no stranger to atrocities committed on this land, the rapid encroachment of fascism puts us all at risk of being overwhelmed into complacency. So I'd like to take this time to urge us all to keep what many of us learned at Bard alive as resistance. Stay curious, stay engaged in your communities in the world, and don't be normal. Thank you so much.
I now call upon James C. Chambers, class of 1981, a member of the Bard College Board of Trustees, and Sanjay De Silva, Associate Professor of Economics, to bring forward the recipient of the Laszlo Z. Bito Award for Humanitarian Service.
I have the honor of introducing Dr. Joe Mo Tun, who will accept the Laszlo Z. Bito Award for Humanitarian Service for Bobo Nye, class of 2004 in absentia. The Laszlo Z. Bito Award for Humanitarian Service is given in recognition of the extraordinary and selfless work of members of the Bard community on behalf of the well-being of individuals threatened by injustice, violence, and tyranny.
Bobo Nye, one of the most extraordinary students to attend the college, served as Deputy Governor of Central Bank of Myanmar, where he pushed for aggressive reforms in the banking sector and insisted on greater transparency and accountability. When yet another coup ended his country's brief democratic experiment, he was arrested and imprisoned. We honor Bobo Nye for standing up against injustice, violence, and tyranny, and we call for his immediate release.
Thank you very much for this honor. As a family friend of Bobo Nye for over 20 years, it's my honor to be here on his behalf. And I'm going to make this remark very, very short to underscore the gravity of his absence caused by unjust detention. If he were on this stage, these are going to be the exact words that he would say. With great gratitude, I consider this award an honor to be the recognition of the Bard community for the strenuous efforts of all those trying hard to build a just, democratic, and modern society in their native land. Thank you.
I now call upon Leon Botstein, President of Bard College and a member of the Bard College Board of Trustees, and Susan H. Gillespie, Second Vice Chair at Bard College Berlin, to bring forward the recipient of the Laszlo Z. Vito Award for Humanitarian Service.
I have the honor of introducing Sasha Skochilenko, class of 2017, who will receive the Laszlo Z. Vito Award for Humanitarian Service, given in recognition of the extraordinary and selfless work of members of the Bard community on behalf of the well-being of individuals threatened by injustice, violence, and tyranny.
We honor you, Sasha Skochilenko, for your bravery in openly defying Russia's dictatorial laws with uncommon artistic flair by finding creative ways to speak out, state facts, and name names, and by living openly with your partner in defiance of laws promoting, quote, traditional family values, unquote. You honor your fellow Bard alumnus, Laszlo Vito, a Hungarian freedom fighter in whose name we honor you today. Congratulations.
It's my first medal in the life because I didn't do sports at school, so
this is interesting. I'm so super thrilled, but also I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed because like an hour ago I mistakenly took Leonard as a preacher, and I immediately asked him if he is working in the church, and I'm sorry for this, but when I was listening to him, I realized I was some kind of right in some way, because you know all of this place is like a big cathedral of knowledge, and all of you are so brilliant people, and thank you all of you, and my special thank you goes to like that fact that I was took here in Bard. You see, back there in St. Petersburg, when I was studying in university, I was studying in Mollie, the creation of the Bard, and this was amazing. This was a journey of my life, and actually I dreamed about visiting Bard because this legendary place all the students and all the professors were talking about, and I actually almost enrolled in the program, but I found out that I had no money for the tickets to America. So you see, I was raised in complete poverty, and I was in the first generation of my family to attend the university, to have a degree. And I heard you have even special programs for these people because, you know, this is hard. And Mollie indeed increased my social chances. And Mollie indeed made my way from zero to hero possible. And I would talk about it tomorrow. So, and, but here I am, standing in front of you and even getting this fancy medal. So I think I need to wear it. So, and I'm really honored by the fact that exactly Mollie is awarding me, because I know, like, you got it. You got a meaning of my artistic gesture, of my long-lasting performances in Prison for Peace, and you even did some case study about me, about my history, about my case. This is like amazing. I ended up in history, and this is like a really strange feeling. Somehow I became knowledge, and knowledge became me. And I think one day someone like me would read about it, and maybe it inspire him or she to do something. Because, you know, I found out that Susan was part of this Vietnam War rallies. And this is great because I personally was really inspired by 60s, really inspired by hippies, really inspired by music from the 60s, from Woodstock. It is so nearby, I would visit it. And I think like one day someone like me would read about it, and the history would make a circle again, and this is pure magic. Thank you for this.
I now call upon Kimberly Marteau Emerson, a member of the Bard College Board of Trustees, and Don Lundy Martin, Distinguished Writer-in-Residence, to present the recipient of the Mary McCarthy Award.
I have the great honor of introducing Joy Harjo, who will receive the Mary McCarthy Award, given in recognition of engagement with the public sphere by an intellectual, artist, or writer.
We honor you, Joy Harjo, for your poetry, which reveals erased histories and indigenous knowledges, assuring that people cannot be annihilated. We honor you as the first Native American to serve as Poet Laureate of the United States. And only the second to serve for 3 terms. We honor you as an educator, musician, and writer.
What an honor to accept the Mary McCarthy Award, to be included in the circle that honors her literary legacy of groundbreaking witnessing and truth-telling. And I'm also joined here today by my husband, Owen Sapulpa, whose intellectual depth and rowdy sense of humor inspire me. My love of words began in music, as I watched my mother type out song lyrics on an Underwood typewriter, the most incredible object in our house. In the 50s, the machines in our house included the heating system, the washer, a television with a tiny black and white screen, 1 black dial phone, and the radio. By far, the typewriter with my mother and her creative, fiery spirit at the helm was the most compelling. That she could create and write song words on a word-making machine that would be added to music was astonishing. It was magic. It was after I started school that I discovered books and how stories and poetry were unwound in the pages and in my imagination. How much as they were at my mother's kitchen table. I read everything I could find in my classroom. Then I discovered the library. We had no books in our house except a Bible and the books I requested for my birthdays. I became a library freak and checked out the limit allowed each week. New books at the library were perched on a shelf near the front. That is most likely where I found Mary McCarthy's novel, The Group, when it was republished to much attention in 1963. I would have been 13. I could have read about it first in the newspaper about her alarming, sharp-witted honesty when it came to sex, partnerships, and marriage. I used to read the newspaper before the stepfather got home, then smoothed it out so it would appear as if it were unread so I wouldn't get beaten. I hungered for stories, for word music, for what was unspoken. McCarthy delighted me with her audacity, her brave spirit, her ear music. Though the particulars of my life were far different in most aspects than McCarthy's, what we had in common was the keen drive to uncover the ridiculous obvious in the construct of society's beliefs about God, religion, sexuality, politics, and the place of women, which were at the root of any story. She was my mother's generation. She was of my mother's generation, brought up within a culture when women were relegated to a few key roles, all in the domestic sphere. To step out of them was to court disapproval and danger. You could essentially be banned in your family and your community for crossing the lines. Though I was the next generation and came from a matriarchal tribal society, we also labored under those beliefs that were set into place for subjugation. When I found Mary McCarthy, I was becoming aware that I was emerging as a witness of the family story, the story of my generation, of my tribal nation, and as a citizen of my community, a citizen of Earth. I was headlong into my art and often felt alone in my witnessing. Artists, as all people, are part of our respective generations, participants of our collective story field. What I have noticed about artists of any sort is that because we continue to question and create, we are essentially agents of activation. As did McCarthy and others of her generation, my generation questioned the war in Vietnam, stood for reshaping society to be more inclusive, and opened up notions of what was allowable in sexuality and relationships, as we called out puritanic repression. And in my community, we stood for sovereignty of tribal nations for justice. These concerns triggered my need to write. I had no plans to become a songwriter, a poet, or writer. My art at first was drawing and painting. When I was an undergraduate, we worked for justice as members of the Native student organization, the Kiva Club, and went out into the local Native communities to assist them as they dealt with coal companies and uranium mining companies and addressed the many acts of racism in border towns. In the midst of these cruel struggles, the Native communities were represented by eloquent speakers who made stories and poetry that reached across generations and proved the relationship of the people to the lands, of the past to the future. It was then, inspired by the Native storytellers, poets, orators, and activists, that I began to write. From Mary McCarthy's memories of a Catholic girlhood, I learned about experimental story making and memoir. She said, "Luckily, I'm writing a memoir and not a work of fiction, and therefore I do not have to account for my grandmother's unpleasing character and look for the Oedipal fixation or the traumatic experience which would give her that clinical authenticity that is nowadays so desirable in portraiture." She goes on to say about this grandmother, "An ugly, severe old woman with a monstrous balcony of a bosom." There you go, that's Mary McCarthy. Her storytelling was a forensic dive into the details of memory, then backing off to question how much memory could be trusted. Her ethics were honed by observation, then by asking the questions that few dare to ask. Mary McCarthy taught me to search for motivation in the eloquence of a situation, in the beauty of a logical or unforeseen outcome. She knew, as I have come to understand, that there is no story without challenge, without the foibles of all us human characters. Take U.S. politics, for instance. What an absurd, bizarre story we are in as we watch what happens when tricksters steal the seat of power. McCarthy reminds us that we are in a moral tale, and every one of us has a part in it. For some of us, that role is in the telling. Again, Mado, thank you for this honor in the name of one of the best teachers for taking care of story, for speaking with the rigor of intellectual inquiry, the truths that will eventually come to bear, and for the reminder of the downright joy of existing in this chaotic, beautiful, complex, collective story.
We now turn to the presentation of Bardian Awards, which are a formalization of the Bard College Alumni Association's tradition of honoring longtime members of the Bard community. Tonight, we have the pleasure of honoring 5 such colleagues with this award. I now call upon Leon Botstein, President of the College, and Brandon Weber, Class of 1997, and Vice Chair and Alumni Trustee of the College, as we present the Bardian Awards. I also have the pleasure of calling upon Thomas Wild, Professor of German, Program Director, German Studies, Research Director, Hannah Arendt Center for Politics and Humanities, to join us at the podium with the first of tonight's Bardian Award recipients.
I have the honor of introducing Peter Filkins, who will receive the Bardian Award.
We thank you, Peter Filkins, for nearly 40 years of teaching the art of creative writing, critical reading, and translation at Simon's Rock and Bard. We honor you as well for your literary accomplishments, 5 books of poetry, highly praised translations, and major biographies, with more to come. We are grateful for your rigor and for your dedication to literature and to both Bard College and Simon's Rock.
So we give chairs to retirees, and we used to actually have the chairs here, but it got unwieldy, and so we give a little maquette of the chair. But in the back of the real chair is an inscription which is chosen to represent the recipient. And for Peter, there's a quote from Ingeborg Bachmann, about whom he is writing a biography. If you don't know who Ingeborg Bachmann was, look it up. And, but among the greatest writers of the 20th century, and Peter has a wonderful habit of writing about people that most often are not that well known, of Adler, for example. So it says here, nothing more beautiful under the sun than to be under the sun.
Thank you so much, Leon, and to Bard. I want to first to begin by thanking my family, the family that raised me, the family I've been blessed to be a part of raising 2 beautiful daughters, their partners, and now 2 lovely grandchildren. I want to thank Bernie Rogers, who hired me at Simon's Rock 37 years ago and gave me that chance and always cheerleaded any chance that I took or seized hold of. And then later, President Botstein for allowing me to come to Bard and fill the very big shoes of William Weaver in taking over the translation workshop here. The motto of Bard is, as we know, a place to think. When I was a little boy, that's all I wanted to do, was to think. And not only is Bard a place to think, but it's a place to live in thought, to create thought, to inspire thought, to debate thought, and to live through thought wherever it may take you, which is the very nature of thought. And I've been honored and so pleased and so lucky to be in a place that valued thought and thinking. Thank you all.
I now call upon Deirdre Dalbert, Dean of the College and Professor of English, to announce our next Bardian Award recipient.
I have the honor of introducing Mark Halsey, who will receive the Bardian Award.
We honor you, Mark Halsey, for the exceptional contribution you've made over the past 35 years to the study of mathematics and to the built environment and the institutional culture of the college. You've been a valued colleague and beloved teacher, and your steady leadership as Vice President for Institutional Planning and Research has made you a trusted and indispensable member of our community.
Right. So this, I don't understand, but I'm going to read it nonetheless. On the back of your chair, it says, "The Rock Solid Man."
Try not to drop that. So I want to thank the Alumni Association for honoring me with this Bardian Award. And I'm grateful to the college for giving me the opportunity to be a part of the work of Bard, and for all the many wonderful colleagues with whom I've worked. I'm very grateful for the love and support of my amazing family, and especially for the love and support of my fabulous wife. Thank you.
I now call upon Christopher H. Gibbs, the James H. Ottaway Junior Professor of Music, faculty Bard College Conservatory of Music, and artistic coordinator of the Bard Music Festival, to join me in presenting the next recipient of the Bardian Award.
I have the honor of introducing Peter Locke, who will receive the Bardian Award.
We honor you, Peter Locke, for the breadth and depth of your musicianship and scholarship. You've published in Hungarian, French, German, and English on an amazing breadth of topics. Your versatility has made you a much sought-after teacher and senior project advisor, and your ability to communicate academic expertise to the public through pre-concert talks and program notes is a gift to all music lovers.
So in this case, I'm going to give the chair to Laki Peter, because the inscription is in Hungarian. And it says, Tanar or Keren. And only you know what that means.
Thank you very much. I have to explain what it means. Tanár kérem translates to Professor, please. And it is the title of a collection of short stories by the beloved Hungarian writer Frigyes Karinti, who lived in the first half of the 20th century. And it is a collection of really funny stories about the stresses of student life. And it's all written from the perspective of the poor student who undergoes all these trials and tribulations. It's not really college, it's more like high school, but I think it was appropriate. That was going to be something that I will enjoy looking at. I'm really honored and moved by this award and the Bardian Award, and the road that has led me to this point on the stage of the Fisher Center tonight has been pretty long and winding and full of unexpected twists and turns. I arrived in this country from Hungary via France 42 years ago. And in the course of those 42 years, I lived in 4 different American states. And each one of these moves, whether international or domestic, amounted to a new start, because each time I was facing people who were not familiar with where I had come from. They didn't know the people I had known at the previous place. And it was really like a fresh start, almost like a new birth every time. And in the course of these decades, I had 2 jobs, and each lasted for 17 years, which is like the life cycle of a cicada, I guess. And the first 17 years were spent in Cleveland, Ohio, where I was working for the Cleveland Orchestra as program annotator. And my American graduate training did not prepare me for that kind of work at all, because the PhD programs usually prepare you for college teaching and little else. But my previous Hungarian training, on the other hand, was different, because there, from the very start, we were told to get out of the ivory tower and go out to people and educate general audiences. And I remember even as a student, I would go to cultural centers to tell people about classical music, go to workplaces, even places like banks and hospitals, to talk to classical music to the people who work there. So when I found myself in this non-academic environment, I could fall back on this early background because I was facing people from all different walks of life who were not there because they needed that course for a degree, but they were there just for the love of music. And this was an orchestra that played a different program every single week. So I had to learn a lot of music that I didn't know before. And I had to learn it very quickly so I could explain it to other people just a few days after I had heard it for the first time. And so this required a lot of intellectual flexibility and an ability to absorb information very quickly. So then my second cicada life here at Bard was, again, different. Finally, I was in an academic environment where I could use my American training, and I could also use all the knowledge that I had picked up at the orchestra, all that repertoire and all that information that I learned during the first half of my professional life. And so, and then the icing on the cake was, when I came to Bard, we had a lot of Hungarian students in the conservatory, largely thanks to Dr. Bito, who gave so many scholarships to Hungarian students. So I was able to teach in my own native language suddenly here in Annandale and Hudson, and help these young people who had just arrived from Hungary and were still adjusting to this environment. So basically what Bard allowed me to do is to bring my life full circle, where I could use everything, every tool in my toolbox, and acquire quite a few more in the process. And I'm always grateful for this opportunity. I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank Leon. I thank everybody here at Bard. I want to thank my students, from whom I also learned so much. And I want to thank all my friends and family, both those who are here tonight and those who are far away. And I want to thank my wife, Tamar, for her love and support. And I'm just very happy and very touched. Thank you very much.
I now call upon Francine Prose, Distinguished Writer in Residence, to join me in presenting the next recipient of the Bardian Award.
I have the honor of introducing Bradford Morrow, who will receive the Bardian Award.
celebrate your boundless enthusiasm and expansive interests, which are reflected in the 10 novels you've published and your many collaborations with artists and musicians, and countless writers you have featured in your beloved literary journal, Conjunctions, and whom you have brought to campus to engage with the community.
I hope I told you they get a real chair eventually. And on your real chair, Brad, it will say on the back a quote which you yourself wrote in a book called The Almanac Branch. And it says, anyway, that's what I think.
Thank you very much, Leon. That's the last line in my second novel, which was one of the 11 books of fiction I wrote while I was here at Bard. And the privilege to be able to teach, to do conjunctions, to bring in visiting writers, and to write my books at the same time seems extraordinary to me. And I feel very privileged about that. I'm very grateful to Leon for having welcomed me to Bard, brought me to Bard in the first place, and Conjunctions. Other early colleagues who I also am indebted to include Dimitri Papadimitriou, with whom I had with whom I had a meeting about Conjunctions, and he told me, he said, I can't believe we've done it this long. We're still here. And that was about 12 years ago. So we kept on going after that. So I appreciate Dimitri. Also, Dean's Stuart Levine was fantastic. I loved him so much. Yes. Michelle Dominy was such a powerhouse and a wonderful dean who looked out for Conjunctions and myself all the way through those years. And when she wanted me to bring a visiting writer to campus, I got right on it. And Peter Carey was the writer, and he had really bad back, so he drank some kind of painkiller all the way up, and he gave a really interesting reading. And then he drank the same painkiller all the way back. It was a fascinating afternoon. Colleagues such as William Weaver, with whom I had the privilege of helping to design in the earliest days of the Bard Fiction Prize, how it would work, what the parameters would be, and then I loved serving as a judge from the first Bard Fiction Prize right up until last year. And well, that has been a wonderful part of my life as well, reading all those books, meeting people whose work, who are at the beginnings of their careers, and getting to honor them so they could come to Bard and flourish, which nearly all of them did. And they're all fans of Bard now. Above all, though, my students are the people I really have such high respect for. They really made it possible for me to look back at these 35 years now and look back in nothing like anger, but look back with great joy. Mollie was one of my students, for instance, and it's just a joy to see her. To know that many of them have gone on to such amazing careers I'm in touch with. So very many of my former students, and that's been the privilege of a lifetime. And when Leon hired me, he had asked me if I ever taught before, and I told him honestly, no. And he said, well, would you like to try? And I said yes, and I have been trying ever since, and it's been the joy of a lifetime to teach those students. So thank you, Leon, thank you, Bard, thank you, all my colleagues, thank you, Deirdre, and Ann Lauterbach and Mary Caponegger and so many of my other colleagues. I appreciate all your guidance, your comradeship, and your wisdom over these years. Thank you so much.
call upon Nicole Caso, Associate Professor of Spanish and Director of Spanish Studies Program, to join me in presenting the next recipient of the Bardian Award.
I have the honor of introducing Melanie Nicholson, who will receive the Bardian Award.
We honor you, Melanie Nicholson, for building and shaping the Spanish Studies program, for your writings and for your leadership in the Division of Languages and Literature, and your contributions to the Bard Network, notably the Bard Prison Initiative. You've steered generations of students toward a love of the Spanish language and the literature of Latin America and Spain.
So on her chair, it's also not in English, and it's by Borges, and it says, "Siempre imagine que el paraíso sería algún tipo de biblioteca."
Well done.
I can barely see it.
Classes
So,
start tomorrow, Leon. Yeah, it says,
congratulations.
thanks, man. I always imagined paradise to be a library. So thank you to Marina Van Swielen for finding that wonderful quote. I met Borges many years ago, but that's another story. So I'll make this quick. I know I'm the last one. I know everybody's tired. When I was in my last year of graduate school at the University of Texas at Austin, I had the great privilege of hearing Ann Richards, then Democratic governor of Texas, give a speech on the campus before about 2,000 students. And with her big blonde bouffant and her Texan accent, she gave a speech that started something like this. And I can't do a Texas accent, but I'll try. Since I was elected governor of Texas, the Berlin Wall has fallen. Apartheid was abolished in South Africa, and the Hubble telescope was launched into orbit. So I thought I would channel some of Ann Richards' chutzpah and recall my last 30 years, something like this. Since I came to Bard as an assistant professor of Spanish and Latin American literature in 1995, the college has more than doubled its undergraduate enrollment. From a quirky but ambitious small liberal arts college nestled in a forest on the banks of the Hudson River, it has developed into a global network that includes 9, or I guess now 10, high school early colleges and affiliated universities across the world. The Bard Prison Initiative was established and is now celebrating its, I believe, 26th year. Bard has become a producer of Fulbright, Watson, Rhodes Scholar, and Davis Projects for Peace award recipients, many, many, many of them. With the acquisition of Montgomery Place and the Messina campus in Berrytown, the Annandale campus has grown to almost 1,000 acres. And I shouldn't forget the design and construction of this building in which we are now congregated. I take full credit for all of this. And now that I am retiring before Leon Botstein, he doesn't have the chance to dispute me. Closer to home, though, I'm thrilled to share with a bit more honesty that since I came to Bard, the Spanish Studies program has grown from 2 to 4 full-time faculty positions and from 1 to 2 foreign language exchange tutors, a 100% increase. Year after year, we've graduated amazing students who've gone on to teach Spanish or English in places from Woodstock to Boston to Buenos Aires, students who work on the Mexican border with undocumented minors, students who organize voter registration in Chicago, students who are correspondents, international correspondents for the New York Times, and the list goes on and on. And I'm so very satisfied to leave this program in the hands of my capable, wise, energetic, and dedicated colleagues, Nicole Caso, Patricia Lopez-Guy, and John Burns. And finally, really finally, because I'm the last one, right? Yeah? On a more personal note, I lived a relatively itinerant childhood and adolescence, and I continued that impulse to move and move through my 20s and 30s. By the time I got to Bard, I didn't really know if I would ever call a single place home. But home has become. Here I raised my son. Here I found the love of my life, Daniel Berthold. Here I've been held in an ever-widening circle of cherished friends and colleagues. Here I've grown creatively and intellectually. Honestly, I don't think I'm ready to say goodbye. What I will say is that there is more gratitude in my heart than I can ever express.
And this is the end of our program for the evening. Thank you all for joining us. If you are joining us for dinner, it's next door. I hope that after that dinner or whatever you're doing next, you will come back. You are cordially invited to the commencement concert right here at the Fisher Center starting at 9:30 this evening. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Stay warm, stay dry, see your friends, have a great reunion and commencement, and please come back next year. We'll be here. Thank you so much.